Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's episode, we're talking about generational marketing. We are going to discuss how it can help you improve your marketing strategies and also help you advertise to those generations in your business that maybe you're unsure of how to target them properly, or maybe you feel like you're discluding them, or perhaps you feel like you're only talking to one demographic when really you want to be talking to several. So we're going to walk you through all the different generations and how each one differs from each other, but also how they also relate, because although we will be talking about millennials, baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, I know that's millennial, same name, same time, whatever. We're going to be talking about all those different generations, but they actually do have so much in common, especially when it comes to digital marketing. So we're going to be talking about all that and more on the GSMC Marketing Podcast. Just to get started, though, I would love to remind everybody, and also please just ask, that if you're enjoying this podcast, write a review and make sure you are subscribed. We post new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're super active on our social media channels and reading your reviews. So if you have a suggestion, a question, a comment, or a concern, if you want me to hear it, the best place to get in touch with me really is in the reviews. So make sure that you are staying active with us so that we can stay active with you. All right, everyone, let's jump right into today's episode. We are going to start by talking about what is new in the marketing world. So our first news story of today is that the House approves a bill to ban the sale and put restrictions on marketing of flavored e-cigarettes and vapes. Moving to stem a vaping epidemic among young people, the House has approved a bill to ban the sale of flavored e-cigarettes and other flavored tobacco products. This bill would place new restrictions on the marketing of e-cigarettes and ban flavors in tobacco products, including menthol cigarettes. The measure also would place a new excise tax on nicotine. The House approved the bill 213-195 on Friday, sending it to the Senate where approval is considered unlikely. So we talked last week about how a lot of vaping companies are sort of being told to put their marketing on hold right now because they seem to be targeting towards a younger demographic, which is really interesting because that's what we'll be talking about today. But obviously there are just some negative side effects to that, as we don't want our youth or people who are in the younger generation to be smoking e-cigarettes. So they always have to be very cautious of how they're marketing their product. I'm not saying that this company needs to stop their marketing, but they do need to make sure that they are aware of society and what their product actually does and how it may affect a younger generation as opposed to the older generation they should actually be targeting. So let me know what you think of this news story, if you think they should be taxed, if you think the bill will go through, or if you think this will all be forgotten by the next time I put up a podcast. We'll see. We've been getting updates on this story quite frequently, so I am very excited to see what is going to happen next. Our second story is that Geely is marketing to people's worst fears with their new Coronis-proof SUV. So the Chinese automaker Geely, whose global footprint includes owning Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, and several other automakers. However, although they've been doing all this work to be helping fight the growing COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak, including donating 50 vehicles for the use of emergency responders, they are still a company. They still need to make money, so it's time again to start selling their cars. Geely has decided to lean on the potential for global pandemic to push its latest SUV. The press release from Geely Icon launched earlier last week that talked about the model's body flush door handles, its 48-volt hybrid system, radar and camera-based intelligent driving technologies, and let's not forget what also was in that press release. At the bottom, it says, in response to the new coronavirus epidemic, Geely Auto developed in record time a new intelligent air purification system, IAPS that is N95 certified. This is highly efficient air purification system works in tandem with the Icon's air conditioner to isolate and eliminate harmful elements in the cabin air, including bacteria and viruses. Okay, so I don't know how to feel about this. I would love to hear what you guys think of this, if you think they're in any sort of right by sort of leaning on the coronavirus. They have done so much to help with the outbreak and to ensure that they're doing everything they can as a company that is obviously in China. They are doing what they can, but is it wrong to then lean on it for their marketing? Is it wrong to say, hey, we did this and we're worried about you, so buy our cars. Buy this whole new car if you're worried about the coronavirus. It is definitely a bit of a sticky situation, so I would really love to hear your guys' thoughts on how you would handle it, or if you don't think this is a situation that needs to be handled. Maybe you think they are absolutely in the right to be able to use the coronavirus in their marketing. I do think it's very interesting how many companies have been responding to the coronavirus and how they respond to it, how they talk about it, and how their marketing has changed since the outbreak. So definitely make sure just to write a review down below of what you think of Geely's marketing with the coronavirus, and if you're tempted now to buy a whole new SUV just to protect yourself a little bit more. So let me know in the review down below. Our third and final story today, I know I talk about this story a lot, guys, so if anybody is sick of hearing about it, write that in the review too, because I will stop. But there's been a new update to the Lizzie McGuire story. So Hilary Duff has now publicly asked Disney to move Lizzie McGuire, the reboot, to Hulu instead of having it on Disney+. So Hilary Duff said on a statement on her Instagram, she was incredibly excited to launch Lizzie on Disney+, and my passion still remains. However, I feel a huge responsibility to honor the fans' relationship with Lizzie, who, like me, grew up seeing themselves in her. I'd be doing a disservice to everyone by limiting the realities of a 30-year-old's journey to live under the ceiling of a PG rating. It's important to me that just as her experience as a preteen and teenager navigating life were authentic, her next chapters are equally as real and relatable. It would be a dream if Disney would let us move the show to Hulu if they were interested, and I could bring this beloved character to life again. So this is a really interesting update because we talked about on our last podcast episode, if you missed it, I'll just recap, about how Disney Plus would be in a difficult situation here with the Lizzie McGuire reboot, just as they are with a lot of other reboots. It's the fact that Lizzie has gotten older, but so has her fans. So do they try to find a whole new audience for Lizzie McGuire and create a show that is targeted towards that new audience? And that would require restructuring the show, introducing new characters, and also it would mean neglecting that old audience that was ready to watch the show. But if they don't neglect that audience and they only pay attention to that audience, they are then forgetting about the new audience that is on Disney Plus. So it's definitely a situation where which side do you pick? Which demographic do you lean towards? Now here's the main problem with what Hilary Duff wants, is that she wants the show to be moved to Hulu. And my question to all of you, to everyone who is listening, reach out on social media. I'll be tweeting about this later. Do you think the audience is on Hulu? Do you think there is enough of a audience or a viewership on Hulu that would be interested in watching a Lizzie McGuire reboot? I mean, the audience was obviously there for Disney Plus to have that reboot, but if they're now moving it to Hulu, that's a whole new group of people who maybe aren't subscribed to Disney Plus, who maybe don't even know what Lizzie McGuire is. Are they going to care? The marketing for this is so particular and so interesting to watch because Disney has not responded yet, but Hilary Duff and the ex-creator of the show are very vocal about what is happening. So I don't know. I'm waiting to see how Disney is going to handle this marketing and how they are going to handle this situation. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to discuss what is generational marketing and how it can be helpful to you and your marketing strategies. So stay tuned for that because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you again and again, black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and on today's episode, we are talking about generational marketing. We are going to be discussing millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, and the most recent, Gen Z. Because although we like to think of Gen Z as being the babies, we all know somebody who was born in 2001, they're currently active in the job market, in our consumer market, and in our audiences. So if you're not targeting them, perhaps you should start. If you're only targeting them, maybe you'll want to listen to this podcast episode because you'll be like, oh, right, I should also be talking to baby boomers and I shouldn't neglect millennials, and also Gen X is still in there. They're sneaky, but they're still in there. So how do I target all of them? How do I only target one of them? And how do I make sure that my product is being targeted to the right demographic? We are going to be talking about all that and more on today's episode. So just to start off, what is generational marketing? Because a lot of people might not know. So generational marketing targets audiences based on attributes associated with their generation. Product development, marketing efforts, and sales strategies all center around generational paradigms, which are their values, their attitudes, their habits, their technology use, their product consumption, and their media trends. So when we think of which generation we're targeting, that's what I want you to focus on. It's not like you're like, oh, my product is great for baby boomers because they really enjoy nightgowns. No, what you're thinking is, what do baby boomers value? What are their attitudes about nightgowns? What are their habits about when and why they buy a new nightgown? What is their technology use? Are they going to go online to shop for that nightgown, or are they going to go to a store? What is their product consumption? How many nightgowns do they go through a year? And what are their media trends? Are they online talking about the product? Are they not? What are they doing? And that's for baby boomers, yes, but then think about Gen Z. How they buy nightgowns is going to be vastly different. So those are the key things we're looking for whenever we talk about a specific generation. So what some of the things that a generation might be more receptive to are the formats of your content, the distribution channels for that content, and the attributes used to sell the products, such as cost, value, personalization, and sustainability. Some generations, and we'll talk about this more as we go on, really value personalization, whereas other generations don't care as much if it's being personalized to them. They care more about the cost and the value of that item. So that's going to change depending on the generation and which generation your audience is a part of. Now, a really big part of this is that a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, perhaps they are creating content and they are creating a product that is not their own generation. And you can come into a bit of a problem with that. I once worked for a housing development that they were building a new retirement home. And at the time I was 20 years old. So nowhere near retirement. I'm still not, although I would love to be near retirement. That sounds lovely. But I was nowhere near that. So I really had to try to get into the headset of, and the mindset of, what are their values? What do they want out of a retirement home? What are they looking for? And something that was so interesting, and this will obviously change depending on when you're marketing this and who you are, but they really cared about it not being personalized. They cared about it more of the value of their life, the value of the cost, and how they were going to be treated. And so I always tried to make that super clear in the marketing. But we're going to talk all about that and more when we get to that specific generation. So there are 4 main generations we are going to be taking a look at today. And what I'd love to do actually is if you're active on social media, then tweet at me which generation you're a part of, but which generation you sell to, because I doubt that there's anyone who is a baby boomer who is selling to baby boomers. It might happen, but let me know. So baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. Generation X was born between 1965 and 1980. Generation Y, or millennials, were born between 1981 and 2000. Generation Z, or Z, sorry guys, I'm Canadian, were born after 2001. So definitely very interesting just to hear the date ranges there. Those obviously, there's room to flex in there. I've often been told that I am a Generation Z because of just the 1 year difference. A lot of people think that ends at 1996, but all the reports I said is it's around the 2000s, which does make sense because that was the millennium. You know, we're millennials. It does make sense, guys, if you really think about it. So let me know what generation you're a part of, but what generation you sell to. In my experience, I'm a millennial, but I mostly sell to Generation X or Generation Z. So let me know in the comments down below or reach out through social media, because I'd just be really interested to hear the differences that everybody has in their marketing, but also in their generations. So let me know. Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to be talking about baby boomers and their marketing. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's episode, we are talking about generational marketing. I am going to take you through each generation that is currently, I would say, the majority of our marketing audience and our target demographics. Obviously, there are generations that expand out of the 4 we will be talking about. However, I find that these 4 are definitely the ones we target the most with any sort of advertising. And if you're someone who's in the position of you didn't know anything about generational marketing before this podcast, you don't know which generation you should be marketing or how you should be targeting them, then this podcast is really going to help you out, because we're going to walk through each generation, we're going to talk about some stats and facts, and I'm going to tell you how you can best market to those generations. So to start out, we are talking about the baby boomer generation. They were born between 1946 and 1964. So a lot of us probably have grandparents that are in the baby boomer generation, or we have at least all heard that phrase, okay boomer. A lot of people often mix together the baby boomer generation and Generation X, which we'll be talking about next, but they are distinctly different, and mostly just in age ranges, but also how they behave on the internet and how they interact with media trends and with products. So baby boomers are by far the generation that are most open to direct marketing tactics, which means if you're going to send out a mailer or flyers or ads that are direct to them, they're going to respond more than any other generation. There are more than 70 million baby boomers currently. The baby boomer generation controls 70% of all disposable income in the U.S. The baby boomer generation is also the largest segment of consumers, comprising about 40% of the total market share. 60% of baby boomers own a smartphone, and 96% of baby boomers use search engines, and 95% of baby boomers enjoy email marketing. They all use email. That's obviously 95% of them all have email. It's hard to believe anyone in this day and age wouldn't have email, but obviously 5% of baby boomers don't. But the 95 that do definitely respond to email marketing tactics, and they appreciate it, and I think it's probably because their email is the most tech savvy that they interact with. And this isn't every baby boomer. Let me be very clear. These are just the generalizations in the research I found. 92% shop for products and services online rather than shopping in stores and shopping malls. This stat shocked me, and I would love to hear from you guys if it shocked you as well, because when you think about the baby boomer generation, they're often the ones that are at least stereotyped to not be using the internet for online shopping or not to be trusting the online shopping generation or ads like that. But 92% of them are shopping online for products. And honestly, it does make sense to me because they're a convenience generation. They would prefer to have something brought to them, especially if they are, say, in a retirement home, they no longer have a driver's license. There are a ton of factors that go into it that make it really the easier choice for them to want to shop online. 60% of baby boomers spend time reading blogs and online articles as a source of information and intrigue. This was another fact that it shocked me, but also it didn't, because I definitely have grandparents and aunts and uncles who are in the baby boomer generation, and they seem to be very aware of things that are going on in pop culture, in the media, in shopping trends, and hey, most of them listen to this podcast, so they're obviously really into interacting with long-form content. And something that we'll see in the other generations that we explore is that they prefer the short-form content. They prefer Instagram posts. They prefer TikTok is a really big thing now because it's so short. The baby boomer generation does not have a short attention span in the same way the millennials and the Gen Z does. Also, sorry guys, total disclaimer for this whole podcast episode, I'm going to say Gen Z. I'm Canadian. I'm not going to say Gen Z. It just doesn't sound right. So just be prepared for that. Anyways, so the generation of the baby boomers definitely enjoy content that has been curated, carefully crafted, and overall just has a lot of attention to the detail. This generation is really big on grammatical mistakes and picking up on them. You can kind of get away with maybe using slang or short form vocabulary with the millennials and the Gen Z, but the baby boomer generation and a little bit of Generation X are very responsive to long form content that has been so carefully edited that it makes them feel like, oh, I enjoy reading this because it's clear that someone put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it, so I'm going to read the whole thing. So if you're looking to sell to that baby boomer generation using your content, they really enjoy the longer form of blogs, podcasts, and online articles. 70% enjoy watching videos about products and services. This is something that actually did not shock me about the baby boomer generation, because I know that, like, my grandma absolutely loves watching a YouTube video for a product before she goes to buy it. I am not like that. I am in the millennial generation, and I'll sometimes watch a product review after I've gotten the product, as weird as that sounds, but it's more like, are other people also struggling with this? Whereas my grandma, who's in the baby boomer generation, really enjoys watching the videos beforehand so that she can kind of get an idea of what products she likes, what products she would want to use, and which products will best suit her life. So again, it's that longer form content. My grandma isn't watching 1 minute long videos about this new soap. She's watching like a 10-minute long video about people talking and interacting with the product, like an honest product review. So some ideas for you to target that baby boomer generation really would be long form content that is directly marketed to them. That's why they appreciate direct mailers, email marketing, articles, blogs, and videos, because that all feels like it was time and energy and effort put into creating that content for them. So they feel respected, they feel valued, and they're more likely to interact with your brand and with your product, because this generation, we're going to talk about Generation X because they're very similar to that, but this generation really does have a lot of brand commitment that if they like your product, they like interacting with your product, they're going to continue to buy your product. This generation is also really into writing reviews and interacting online with your product. So if they really enjoyed it, they're going to talk about it. So ensure that all of the content you're generating for the baby boomer generation is targeted towards them specifically. They really do value great price, a good product, great reviews, but they really do appreciate the time and effort that you can put in by creating long-form content for them. So what I would like everyone to do right now, if you are targeting the baby boomer generation, or even if you're not, get your pen and paper out. I always recommend you have it beside you during this podcast, and write down 5 different ways you could do long-form content for your product for a baby boomer. If you sell soap is such a good example, guys. I don't know why I don't use soap all the time. If you sell soap and you're trying to sell this new soap to the baby boomer generation, then maybe one of your ideas is, okay, I'm going to create a 10-minute long video about using the soap, the benefits of using the soap, how your skin looks after an hour, how your skin looks after 2 hours, how your skin looks after a week of using this soap. And then I'm also going to write a blog. My second idea is a blog post about the soap, how we made it, what chemicals, what products are used in the soap. Are they natural? Are they not? We're going to talk about that. And then my third idea is that I'm going to find articles about other soap, and I'm going to put them all together in one blog, and then I'm going to send that out with email marketing. So really take some time just to concentrate and consider what a baby boomer might enjoy interacting with, because they're not going to enjoy like a 10-minute long video that's not anything they're interested in. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. You have to create content that is long form, but it still has to be long enough and considerate enough for them to want to watch it. It still needs to be engaging and entertaining for them, because you're not going to sit through a 10-minute video that isn't engaging, and that's just across the board for all the generations. Okay, everyone, when we come back, we are going to be talking about Generation X. And for me, my parents are in Generation X, and so they're definitely an interesting generation to look at. I feel like we all have stereotypes for the baby boomers and for millennials and for Gen Z, but Gen X is one of those more sneakier ones. They kind of do just fly under the radar, and they interact with our products for sure, but we definitely don't talk about them as much. So we are going to be taking a look at their marketing and how you can target them more specifically. So stay tuned, because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Are you a business owner? Someone interested in the latest news that might affect your business? Then check out the GSMC Business News Podcast, a show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. The GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
To the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's episode, we are taking a look at generation marketing. Before the break, we talked about baby boomers. They are the generation born between 1946 and 1964. We are now going to take a look at Generation X, which was born in 1965 to 1980. So the Generation X are more than 60 million of our population, and that's a global population. There are 60 million Generation X, and they were born between 1965 and the 1980s. More than 80% of this group use Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace. Oh my goodness, what? I know, guys. I took a look at that too, and I couldn't believe that. That does not mean that they are active on MySpace currently, but they all were a part of the generation where that was coming up. So they all still had it. Obviously, a lot of MySpace pages don't exist anymore, but they all had it and they did interact with it. So although they might not be totally accustomed to online marketing, they are definitely involved with it and they do interact with it. They're just not as aware of it, or they're not as consciously content with it, I think is the right way to put it. They know it's there, they know it exists, but they are not actively engaging with it, but they're not actively denying it either. So 72% of Gen X use the internet to research businesses. Their top 4 trusted sites are Google or Bing, just your listing on there, your official website, Yelp, or popular online directories. So that's really important to remember that Generation X, if you're targeting them, make sure that your website, your online reviews, your Google reviews, all of that is really up to date because they care. They are looking into it, but they're not looking into it in the same way as like the millennials or the Gen Zs will. Instead, they're looking at it on a surface level. They're going to type in the name of your business. If it comes up, they're reading the reviews. They are not going to take hours to read all of the reviews. They're going to read the top 3 reviews. They're going to take a look at your star rating. So ensure that all of that is neat and tidy and up to date with your current information. Make sure the number is correct. Make sure you're linked to your website on Google, and make sure there's images. Guys, images on Yelp and on Google and on Bing are so important, especially for the Generation X, just so that they're able to interact with your company a little bit more without having to like look at your Instagram or your Facebook. However, just to take a look at that, I know I talked about briefly how many were on there, but 95% of Generation X use Facebook, 35% use LinkedIn, and 25% post regularly on Twitter, which is kind of interesting because a lot of the other generations might have Twitter, but they're not posting regularly on it. So if you are targeting Generation X and you're thinking maybe Instagram, maybe Facebook, maybe Twitter, definitely try to concentrate on Facebook and Twitter because those are the ones Generation X uses the most. Also, LinkedIn, they're definitely one of the only generations, I don't want to say the only generation, but they're definitely one of the main generations that uses LinkedIn, and a lot of people don't understand how important using LinkedIn for marketing really is. So if you're curious about that, we do have a whole podcast episode dedicated to LinkedIn and LinkedIn marketing. So go take a look or go take a listen to that podcast after you're done listening to this one, because it will help fill in the gaps. If you're targeting Generation X and you want to use LinkedIn, that'd be a really helpful resource for you. So Generation X has the highest brand loyalty across all generations. I talked about this a little bit with baby boomers because they definitely have it as well. But if a Generation Xer loves your product, they're going to continue buying your product and your product only. My mom loves one brand of makeup and she only buys that brand of makeup. Whereas me and my sisters constantly, every week I buy a new kind of foundation. Not every week, I'm not wasteful. But every time I need a new one, I buy a new brand or I try a new brand. Whereas my mom and my aunts and my boyfriend's mom, everyone's mom always only has that one kind of makeup they like. And it's because they have that brand loyalty. So right now, if you are targeting a Generation X and you're unsure about which product you have the most brand loyalty with, do a survey and ask them. And then once you find out, make sure you always have it in stock and make sure you talk about it a lot because it'll encourage them to buy other products as well. On average, Generation Xers spend 110 minutes on their mobile device daily. Guys, that's crazy. And know what the funny thing is that I probably spend more, because millennials definitely do spend more and Gen Z definitely spends more. But just to hear it in a total amount of minutes, oh my goodness, guys, that is terrifying. Let me know in the comments down below, question of this podcast. I know I've asked you a bunch, but I really want to hear this one. How many minutes a day do you think you spend on your phone? 110 minutes for Generation X? That is crazy. All right, guys, anyways, let's move past. Generation X are really into watching videos and interacting with that type of content. The videos that they want to watch the most are past events, people from the past, old TV commercials, and music from the past. So they're definitely the more nostalgic generation, and they really enjoy seeing bits of their childhood and bits of their old memories brought to life. The It Chapter 2 movie did a really good job at doing that, sort of bringing back the past and bringing that nostalgia out from the first It movie. Tons of ads and tons of products do this, but it's so important when you're targeting Generation X because they love it. They love their past and they love being nostalgic. So guys, this statistic, if you take any away from the Generation X, is that 54% of Generation X consumers feel overlooked by brands and marketers. We talked about this at the start of the podcast, but Generation X is definitely the one that they get lumped in with baby boomers or they get lumped in with millennials, and people sort of forget that no, they're their own generation. They have their own needs and they have their own ways of being marketed too. And one of those ways is definitely the nostalgia pull. They are the most nostalgic generation. So if you're trying to target Generation Xers, find a way to involve nostalgia is the best tip I can give you. They enjoy interacting with all the similar types of content as baby boomers, so keep that in mind as well. They enjoy the longer form content, but they're really into that nostalgic pull for sure. So if you can include an old song, an old actor, an old reference, people in the Generation X love that. They are just so into that and they really love interacting with it. So keep that in mind when you're targeting this generation. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to be talking about millennials or Generation Y. I don't know anyone who calls them Generation Y. We're millennials. We know this. We are such a big part of especially digital marketing, and we're such a big part of consumerism, and we're the customer a lot of the time, but we're also running businesses. So we are definitely a huge generation that you can't skip out on unless you're not involving us in your marketing. I don't know. I really want to hear what generation you guys are marketing to most, but we are going to be talking about millennials when we come back. So stay tuned because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast.
Marketing Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's podcast, we are talking about generational marketing. We have talked about the baby boomers, we talked about Generation X, and now we're going to talk about the generation that is the most talked about generation probably ever, millennials. Why are they the most talked about? Because we won't stop talking about ourselves. We're going to talk about all that and more. We're going to talk about how you can target millennials, how you can interact with them online, and what types of content you should be using to interact with them. So just to start out, millennials were born from 1981 to 1996. I've also heard, and we said it at the top of the podcast as well, that this could range to the 2000s, and after that you are Generation Z. So there's definitely the most flex with this one. I feel like baby boomers and Generation X have hard dates on when they were born and when they stopped. But millennials are so flexible in like, when does it start? When does it end? I would definitely say around the late 90s is when it ends. If you're in that group, then you are a part of the millennials. But millennials and Gen Z, there are so many similarities that targeting one is sort of like targeting both. There are slight differences, and we'll get into that when we talk about Generation X. But for now, we'll put it as 1981 to 2000s roughly. But just know if you're in the late 90s, you definitely do flex in between the two of them. So there are more than 80 million millennials that take up all of our consumerism needs. They're buying stuff, they're shopping online, they're interacting with our ads. Millennials make up 25% of the U.S. population. Millennials also make up 21% of consumer discretionary purchases, which is estimated to be over $1 trillion in direct buying power and a huge influence on older generations, which is also true. We talked about in the baby boomer generation how they're watching these YouTube videos, so they're interacting with it online. Who showed them how to do that? Their grandkids. Not saying that is a general statement, but it definitely... there is some, wavering there that the millennials do influence other generations, especially older generations, and also the new generation as well, which is Generation Z. Oh my gosh, guys, I said Generation Z. Are you so proud of this Canadian? Thank you. All right, 50% of millennials would be more willing to make a purchase from a company if their purchase supports a cause. And this right here is one of the main differences of millennials to baby boomers and Generation X, is that they're willing to pay a little bit more and interact with the brand more if they think it's not just a brand. They're definitely the generation that wants the face to the brand, and millennials are definitely more interested in interacting with a person over a product, which is why if we can buy a product and also be interacting with a person or interacting with a cause, we are definitely more likely to come back or pay a little bit more because of that. We are also definitely the generation that is more involved with social media, although we'll talk about that more later, but it's because we are willing to interact with the person behind the company. We want to see them. We want to know their lives. We want to see them drinking coffee because it'll make us feel less like we're buying into some big organization or some big man corporation, some big company, because we see the person, we interact with the company, we interact with the brand. So we're definitely the generation that wants to interact. We want to be known. We want to know people. We are definitely just, to put it frankly, it's a friendly thing. We want to be friends with everybody. We want everyone to be in love and be happy. So 46% of millennials reported having 200 plus friends on Facebook, which I remember being a really big thing. People really used to care about how many friends on Facebook they had. It's definitely not something that people care about anymore, and it's definitely not something that is as promoted or as talked about, but it definitely used to be a running joke if you only had 4 friends on Facebook. But now, because of the Generation Z generation that we'll talk about later, people are closing their circles a little bit more tight and keeping people out rather than inviting people in just due to safety concerns. But the millennials are definitely the generation that don't care about safety online, and we're definitely just trying to be friends with everybody and interact with everything. So 46% of millennials post original photos or videos online that they themselves have created. So this is really important too, especially from a marketing perspective. And something that I've seen a lot of companies do lately is hire brand ambassadors to promote their product. Now what that means is that you'll be getting 20% off of a t-shirt that says the company's name on it. And you are then encouraged to, 1, buy the shirt, share your coupon code with everybody else, and then post about it on your social media. Now you're probably wondering, why would anybody do this for a free shirt? Because it's not even free. It's just 20% off. They do it because it makes them feel special, like they're interacting with the brand, like they're part of the company, like they're helping out, and like they're going to become Instagram famous off of this. So it's super important to remember that when you're targeting the millennial generation, they feel like they are targeting everybody else. They feel like they're a part of it. They feel like they're also all marketers. So really keep that in mind when you're targeting them, because a lot of them create their own content, and they might be creating content for you that you're unaware of. They might be doing product videos. They might be taking photos. They might be interacting with your product online. They might be commenting or sharing. So just be really aware of that. 80% of millennials want brands to entertain them. This is huge because I feel like the other generations we've talked about haven't cared so much about being entertained by a product or by a brand. They care about the longer form content, sure, but millennials constantly just want to be entertained and want to feel like everything they walk into is like a giant Hollywood movie. So that's really important when you're creating content. They just don't want to see a basic post. They want to see something over the top and extraordinary. 40% want to participate in co-creation of products and brands. So this is very similar to what we already talked about of how the whole idea of a brand ambassador really is that you're giving someone a bit of a discount off of your product so that they will talk about it for you. Because here's the thing, if you're interacting with them in that way, that builds brand loyalty, that they're going to keep buying your product in hopes that maybe you'll share their photo again, or you'll interact with them again, or they'll get a discount again. So it just kind of continues on that circle. 70% feel a responsibility to share feedback with companies after a good or a bad experience. So this is different from other generations because millennials don't just want to share their good experiences or their bad ones. They're going to share both. They're going to write positive reviews and negative reviews. Whereas other generations, it's one or the other. Millennials are very vocal online and really like to talk about products and how they were treated by a company. So finally, 30% of millennials say that they are willing to purchase a product or service to support a cause they believe in, even if it means paying a bit more. We already talked about this a little bit more, but the paying a bit more is so important because one of the ways to really target that millennial generation is by hooking a cause onto your product or talking about the cause behind your product. If you design soap, again, soap is just so perfect as an example for every generation because every generation needs soap. If you're selling soap and you really want to help women find their inner beauty with this soap, then talk about that because millennials just want to hear your why. They want to hear your reason. So if you give them a why and a reason, they're going to be willing to spend more money and interact with your product more. So really, when you're targeting millennials, focus on your why. Why are you doing this? And make sure you're vocal about your why. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to be taking a look at Generation Z or Z, depending on which country you're listening to this podcast. So stay tuned because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's episode, we have been focusing on generational marketing. We have taken a look at Generation X. We have taken a look at baby boomers. We have taken a look at millennials, and now it is time to take a look at Generation Z or Z, depending on your country of residence. So, Generation Z or Z have been told that they have been born around 1997 or the early 2000s. This is definitely a flexible number, which is really interesting, and I wonder if we'll ever get to a place where we have a hard date of when you become a millennial or where you become a Generation Z. Let me know what you think your hard date is for a Generation Z versus millennials. For me, it's 1997 or 1996 because I'm definitely more in the middle than a lot of other generations are because you have those people who are interacting like millennials, but they are definitely more in line with the Generation Z values. So definitely comment below what you think those dates are and how you think they should range. So there are more than 60 million Generation Z people on today's earth, and that's taking a look from 1997 to the present day. So 66% of Generation Z say that the product quality matters most to them when making a purchase. So this is really big because that's also a very baby boomer mentality. Millennials are very into just buying things if it's a valuable price, if there's a cause with it. But Generation Z cares about the product value. So they're more willing to buy the $80 foundation versus the $8 foundation because they're like, this product's just better for my skin. This is going to help me out in the long run. This product just has a higher value. So really concentrate on value when you're targeting Generation Z. Generation Z is expected to make up 30% of the U.S. workforce by 2030. That's insane. But also I work with people who were born in 2001, and I'm like always amazed that they were born after Shrek came out. Like that's always like my time of how I time things, and it's just crazy to me that you could be born in 2002 and be currently in the workforce. But hey guys, it does make sense. So 65% of Generation Zs see value in discounts and rewards programs. So this is really important too, because if they're spending more money on the more valuable product, then they're more willing to come back and interact with the rewards program. They're willing to buy stuff and rank up points and just feel like they're a valued customer. They're going to use those. They're definitely not the generation to have like 5 different value cards. They're going to have one, and they're going to continuously use it so that they can stack up points. 58% of Generation Z is willing to pay more for products that are targeted to their individual personalities. So this is when you get things similar to Ipsy boxes or any of those subscription boxes that people pay for, because those are all personalized to the individual person. You can get a random box, sure, but most of them, especially if it's a beauty box, makes you type in your skin color, your skin combination, your weight, your exercise level, what you eat, all that kind of stuff, so that you can get a box that's personalized to you. So that's also very important when you're targeting Generation Z. 71% of Generation Z want to see more diversity in advertising. This is huge right now, and you see a lot of really big companies interacting with this idea and also entertaining it by changing their marketing and changing their marketing strategies. It is so incredibly important if you're targeting Generation Z or any generation right now that you have that diversity in your marketing. It's a trend, but it's a trend that is going to stay and it is going to stick around. So get on board. 61% of Generation Z is willing to pay more for products that are produced ethically and sustainably. So this is a little bit similar to the millennial generation in the fact that they really care about the why of why you're doing something and if it's for a cause that they care about. But this is a little bit more extreme because this isn't really anything to do with your why. You could be selling these candles just for the sake of selling candles, but they need to know that how they were made were ethically and sustainably. They're really big into that world. I don't know if anybody's heard of the trend Visco Girl, but Visco Girl is basically, they're just super environmentally conscious. They really care about the environment and having reusable straws, metal straws, reusable water bottles. It's called a hydro flask for them. So it's just super important too. If you're targeting the Generation Z, you're making sure you talk about how sustainable and how ethically sourced your product is. 95% of Generation Z uses another device while watching TV, most commonly for social media or chatting with their friends. So this is also really important and just a really good reminder to everybody listening to this podcast that don't just target on social media, don't just target in commercials, don't just do one thing. Cross-channel promotion is huge because, like the Generation Z, the 95% of them that are watching TV and going on their phones, they're not alone. Every generation seems like they're doing that right now. But since Generation Z is definitely the future, just more and more people are going to be doing that. So make sure you cross-channel promote often and frequently. 71% of Generation Z has a Netflix subscription. This is the most out of any generation. So this to me is like, guys, market on Netflix if you're able to. Like, Netflix is huge. Streaming services are huge. Getting your product out there in a way that doesn't feel like an ad, but it is an ad, is a really, really big deal. 62% of Generation Z checks Instagram daily, and 60% of Generation Z visit YouTube daily. So if you're looking for which channel to promote Generation Z the most, it is definitely Instagram, followed by YouTube. 75% of Generation Z uses social media to keep up with celebrities and celebrity news. They're not really following brands. They're not really following their friends. They are following celebrities and influencers. Influencers are huge to the Generation Z. So if you have the ability to interact with an influencer, especially a big name one, even if they're just big in your city, definitely do that. 54% of Generation Z say that social media influencers influence them more than any other marketing channel. So again, use influencers. I did a whole podcast on influencers. So if you are unaware of how to get in touch with them, how to interact with them, or how to use them in your marketing, go listen to that. Because if you're targeting Generation Z, there's no other way around it. You are going to have to use influencers. They are a huge part of marketing to that generation. Okay, everyone, that is it for today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please write it in the review down below or reach out through social media. Thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquash, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app, and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.